If your child does this when you try to read them a bedtime story, it may be one of 10 early signs of ADHD that you can catch between 6 months and 5 years of age. These behaviors are so subtle that most parents and even some pediatricians completely overlook them as an early sign of ADHD. As a clinical psychologist, I support families dealing with these concerns daily. So today, I'm going to guide you through all 10 signs and share how you can check for each of them at home, because noticing these signs early can be truly transformative for your child's academic success, social relationships, and your family's daily peace. So what's this thing that they do during story time? Well, it's a matter of sustained attention, and the best way that you can see this is during your regular bedtime routine. So here's a quick test that you can try tonight at bedtime. Grab one of your family's favorite board books, something that's very short and engaging, and settle into your normal reading spot. Start reading as you normally would, but pay attention to how long they can focus. By 6 to 9 months, they should be able to sit through one short board book. Then stop and watch what happens when you suggest reading another book. Your child should either eagerly agree to another book or politely indicate that they're done, but they should have made it through that first book with interest. They might point at the pictures, babble in response, or snuggle in closer, and that's exactly what we want to see. They're demonstrating sustained attention. Essentially, they're using their developing focus skills to follow the story from beginning to end. But if your child consistently squirms, tries to flip the pages rapidly without listening, or gets up or crawls away within the first few pages of even a very short book, that's concerning because they're not able to maintain attention for age-appropriate activities. And this is very important because by 18 months, your child should be able to listen to several short story books. And by kindergarten age, they should be able to sit through longer picture books during story time. This progression shows developing attention skills. So if you notice that your child's attention span for books isn't progressing or is significantly shorter than these guidelines, then that's sign number 1. Before we continue with the remaining signs, I want to emphasize that observing one or even several of these behaviors in your child doesn't automatically indicate that they have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. My goal with this video is simply to bring awareness to certain patterns that could be valuable to discuss with your child's doctor if you have questions about their attention span and activity patterns. Your healthcare provider can then determine whether any additional evaluation might be beneficial. So please remember, just take note of anything that resonates with your experience and mention it during your child's next medical appointment. Okay, now the second sign also involves attention, but it's the flip side of what we just discussed. When your child is playing quietly or sitting calmly, maybe with toys or just relaxing, first observe their facial expression and body language before you do anything. Do they have that 1,000-yard stare, looking like they're physically present but mentally somewhere else entirely? Their eyes might be open and looking around, but there's a distant, unfocused quality of their expression. Now call their name from across the room using a normal tone. Sometimes they'll respond immediately, but other times it's like they can't hear you at all, even though you've had their hearing checked and there's nothing wrong with it. What you want to see is consistent responsiveness to their name within a few seconds. But if your child seems to space out regularly, looking like they're lost in their own world, and inconsistently responds when called, that suggests attention regulation issues. Most parents think they're such a dreamer or they have such a great imagination, rather than recognizing this as inconsistent attention regulation, sometimes hyper-focused on internal thoughts, sometimes completely disengaged from the external environment, making it hard to shift attention when needed. If you notice this daydreaming quality combined with inconsistent name response happening regularly throughout the day, then that is sign number 2. In addition to these daytime attention patterns, it's also important to look at nighttime patterns. So here's how you can assess this at home. For 1 week, track 3 things: how long it takes your child to fall asleep after the lights are out, how often they wake up during the night, and how rested they seem in the morning, even after a full night's sleep. By 24 months, most children should fall asleep within 15 to 30 minutes, sleep through the night without frequent awakenings, and wake up feeling refreshed. But if your child regularly takes more than 45 minutes to fall asleep, wakes up multiple times per night, or seems tired even after adequate sleep, these could be ADHD-related sleep issues. Another way to notice this is when your child becomes big enough to climb out of the crib. If they struggle to stay in bed without the physical barrier, it may be an underlying hyperactivity or attention issue. Sleep problems can be caused by the same brain differences that create ADHD symptoms. Either the hyperactivity makes it hard to settle down, or attention issues make it difficult to stay focused on the task of sleeping. If sleep has been an ongoing challenge despite good sleep hygiene and consistent routines, then that is sign number 3. Now, while we're on the topic of brain-based differences, something else that you want to pay attention to is whether your child can estimate time passing and handle transitions smoothly. To test this one, here's what you want to do. Give clear warnings like 5 more minutes at the park or 1 more episode and then screens are done. Then follow through exactly when you said you would. What you should notice is that over time, with consistent practice, your child starts to understand what 5 minutes actually means. They might start wrapping up their play or mentally preparing for the transition. But if your child is constantly surprised by time limits, saying, that wasn't 5 minutes, or we just started, even after months of consistent time warnings, this suggests difficulty with time perception. But here's when it gets really telling. Pay attention to what happens when transition time actually arrives. Do they have intense meltdowns that seem way out of proportion for the situations? Most kids might protest briefly or need a gentle nudge, but they generally move from one activity to another without major drama. But kids with ADHD often have explosive reactions to transitions, even when they've been given plenty of warning. Here's the connection. Poor time estimation makes transitions feel sudden and unexpected, even with warnings. Their brains didn't accurately track the passing of time, so 5 minutes feels like it was actually 30 seconds. You might hear things like, that episode was really short, when it was actually 22 minutes. Or you may see complete meltdowns when leaving a playground despite multiple time warnings. Parents often think they just really love what they're doing, or they're being dramatic about transitions, not realizing that ADHD brains process time differently, making every transition feel abrupt and unfair. By age 4 to 5, kids should have a basic sense that 5 minutes means a short time and be able to transition without major emotional upheaval. If this understanding isn't developing, that's sign number 4. Now, this next sign might be the one that's causing the most turmoil in your household, especially if you have multiple children. But before we move on, I want to give a shout out to Emma Hubbard, who kindly suggested that I make this video. She's an incredible creator, and her video on the 10 subtle signs of autism was spot on. I'll link to her channel in the description below. Let's move on to sign number 5, which shifts us from attention issues to impulsivity behaviors. Now, this one you can't really test. You just need to watch for it during your day-to-day routine. When your family is having calm moments, maybe watching a movie or working on a puzzle, pay attention to what your child does. Do they seem to create disruptions even when everyone is content? This might look like repeatedly making the same annoying sound, or bumping into siblings as they walk by, or knocking over someone else's block tower, or interrupting conversations with random comments. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many parents describe feeling like they can't have 5 minutes of peace without their child stirring something up, even during activities that should be enjoyable for everyone. Now, this isn't the same as defiant behavior or deliberately trying to cause trouble. In ADHD, these behaviors come from boredom combined with poor impulse control. They're trying to make their environment more stimulating. So if your child consistently creates these small disruptions during otherwise peaceful moments without seeming to intend harm or challenge authority, then they're showing that impulsivity that we associate with ADHD. Kids with ADHD can be remarkably good at learning exactly how to get a reaction from a family member. It's not malicious. Their brains are just seeking stimulation to combat under-arousal. You might find yourself constantly redirecting their behavior during family time, or feeling exhausted by the end of the day from managing these small but persistent disruptions. If you find yourself saying, stop bothering your sister, or leave that alone multiple times during quiet family time, and especially if that doesn't become less frequent as your child ages, then that is sign number 5. Now, while we're still talking about impulsivity, let's look at a more extreme version that can be absolutely terrifying for parents. This next sign involves dangerous impulsivity. And while the behavior itself isn't subtle when it happens, here's why it often gets missed as an ADHD sign. Most parents and even professionals focus on the attention and hyperactivity parts of ADHD, but impulsivity is actually the third core feature that often goes unrecognized. People think hyperactive kid or can't focus, but they don't always connect impulsive behaviors to ADHD. So think about the last time that you went anywhere with your child. You parked the car, helped them out, and placed them on the ground to walk. Have you ever had them bolt away from you, especially in a dangerous setting like a parking lot? If you've had that heart-stopping moment chasing your child across the parking lot or catching them just before they run into traffic, you know that sinking feeling in your stomach. Many parents describe it as one of their most terrifying parenting moments. Now, all toddlers test boundaries and might take a few steps away, but we're talking about children who suddenly run full speed towards danger without any awareness of risk. This isn't typical toddler behavior or defiance. It's impulsivity so strong that they get an idea, like running to see something interesting, and literally just run with it without any thoughts of safety or consequence. So think about your child's behavior in public spaces. If they show this kind of dangerous, impulsive running, that's sign number 6, and a sign that the impulsivity component of ADHD might be worth discussing with your pediatrician. Now let's shift from those impulsive behaviors to how ADHD affects daily routines and following instructions. Throughout today, pay attention to how many reminders your child needs for simple one-step tasks. Try getting instructions like, please put your shoes by the door, or time to brush teeth. Here's what to expect. Your 2 to 3-year-old typically needs 2 to 3 reminders, plus some help. Your 3 to 4-year-old should need only 1 to 2 gentle reminders, and by age 4 to 5, 1 clear instruction should often be enough. What you should see is your child heading towards the task, maybe getting briefly distracted, but generally completing what you ask of them in a reasonable time frame. But if your child consistently gets completely sidetracked, like you found them playing with toys instead of putting their shoes away, or they head to the bathroom to brush teeth, but you go in and find them brushing their hair or doing something completely different, then that suggests attention difficulties. If this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. Many parents describe feeling like a broken record, repeating the same instructions over and over again. You might catch yourself saying, I already told you 3 times, more often than you'd like. This isn't about forgetting what you said or not understanding. When you remind them they should remember the original request, it's that their brains switched focus mid-task. Their attention gets captured by something else, a toy they see or a sound they hear, or even just their own thoughts, and the original instructions get lost. So today, just count how many reminders your child typically needs. If it's consistently more than expected for their age, then that's sign number 7. Building on that challenge with single instructions, let's look at what happens when we ask kids to remember and complete multiple steps in a sequence. Try giving a 3-step instruction appropriate for your child's age. For a 3 to 4-year-old who needs to clean their room, you might say, put your dirty clothes in the hamper, put your clean clothes in the drawer, and then make your bed. Child should be able to complete at least the first step and hopefully remember the second, and with a gentle reminder, finish the third. But if you find that they complete one step and then completely forget that there were other parts, or they do all the steps but in a confused way, like the clothes are just shoved randomly in drawers, that suggests difficulty holding multiple instructions in mind. If you've ever given your child a multi-step task only to find them standing in their room looking completely lost, or discover that they've done something completely different than what you asked, you know how frustrating this can be for both of you. Multi-step tasks require working memory, holding several pieces of information in your brain while completing them in order. Kids with ADHD often struggle with this executive functioning skill. Parents often think that they're not paying attention or they're just being lazy, rather than recognizing that their child's brain genuinely struggles to hold multiple pieces of information simultaneously. This becomes especially important as kids get older and homework involves multi-step processes, where teachers give complex instructions for projects. If multi-step instructions consistently feel overwhelming for your child compared to their peers, then that's sign number 8. Now, staying with executive functioning challenges, let's look at how ADHD affects impulse control in social situations. Think about the last time you had a phone call or you were chatting with another parent at a park. How many times did your child call your name, tug on your sleeve, or interrupt with questions or comments? Now, all children interrupt sometimes. That's normal development. But we're looking for a sense of urgency and frequency that seems excessive compared to other kids their age. Kids with ADHD often can't wait their turn in conversations. They have a thought or need and feel compelled to express it immediately, even when they know that you're busy. If you've ever tried to have a 5-minute phone conversation only to be interrupted 10 times, or found yourself apologizing to other adults for your child's constant interruptions, you understand how socially exhausting this can be. This comes from poor impulse control combined with difficulty holding thoughts in their mind. They worry that they'll forget what they wanted to say if they wait, so the urgency feels very real to them. You might notice that when you try to teach them to wait, they become distressed or upset, not because they're being defiant, but because waiting feels genuinely difficult for their brains. Remember, some of these signs are common in young kids, but if worrying about these 10 signs is keeping you up at night, try paying attention to the intensity and the frequency of the behavior. For example, does your child frequently seem unable to wait even brief moments for your attention, even after you've asked them to wait and they're genuinely trying? If interruptions happen so frequently that phone calls or adult conversations become nearly impossible, that's sign number 9. Our final sign has to do with emotion regulation, and this one is particularly important for parents to understand. Throughout your daily interactions, pay attention to how your child responds when you give gentle corrections, like, please use your inside voice, or that's not quite right, try again, or remember to put your plate in the sink. Most kids might feel briefly disappointed or frustrated, but they bounce back relatively quickly and either try again or move on to something else. But kids with ADHD often have intense, disproportionate reactions to even mild feedback. Tears, anger, complete meltdowns, or shutting down entirely over corrections that seem minor to adults. You may see them say things like, I'm the worst at everything, or I never do anything right, in response to simple corrections. They may respond with, I know, before you even get a chance to complete your corrective sentence because they can't bear to hear you say what they've done wrong. Or they might refuse to try again after one piece of feedback. ADHD brains experience what's called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. They perceive criticism or feedback as much more intense and personal than intended. Their emotional reaction system is essentially hypersensitive. Parents often think they're just really sensitive or they're traumatic, rather than recognizing this as an ADHD-related emotion regulation issue that needs specific support. Look for patterns where your child's emotional reaction to feedback seems much stronger than the situation warrants, and recovery takes much longer than expected. If gentle corrections consistently result in big emotional reactions that seem out of proportion, that's sign number 10. The good news is that understanding these signs early means that you can get the right support and strategies in place. ADHD kids can absolutely thrive with the right approach, especially when parents know how to give feedback in ways that don't trigger that rejection sensitivity that we talked about. Because here's what's crucial. Kids showing these signs need a very specific parenting approach. Traditional parenting strategies often backfire and can actually make behaviors worse instead of better. In this video, I break down the 4 different parenting styles and reveal which parenting approach is backed by psychology research, and guess what? It's also the best one for kids with ADHD. If your child shows signs of ADHD, understanding the best parenting approach to use is the key to helping them succeed and giving yourself confidence instead of constantly second-guessing every interaction. So make sure you check this video out.